The kids were already knee-deep in the lake, shrieking and splashing like it was some public park on the 4th of July. Their towels and floaties were strewn across my Adirondack chairs. And there she was, Karen lounging on my porch swing, sandals off, sipping what looked like a bargain brand iced tea from a reusable tumbler like she owned the place. I stood at the top of the porch steps, arms folded, keys in hand, calm, stylish, silent. Then, without a word, I turned, walked over to the wrought iron gate leading down to the dock, and locked it with a sharp, deliberate snap. Karen didn't notice at first. Her boys, probably 7 and 9, were too busy hurling water at each other, and the youngest, a toddler in a neon vest, was stomping through the shallows right next to my canoe. Then she heard the gate. Her head lifted slowly, squinting toward the sound. I walked back, took my seat on the porch, crossed one leg over the other, and sipped my coffee. Didn't say a thing, just watched. Karen's face stiffened. She stood up, eyes darting between the lake, the locked gate, and me perched like a judge at a summer tribunal. Then she marched over, voice rising with every step. "You can't lock us in." I tilted my head slightly. "Oh no, Karen," I said, low and even. "I locked you out." "That gate swings your way. Good luck getting back to your car." Her jaw dropped. For a second, she looked like a cartoon character mid-glitch. Then she reached for her phone like it was a weapon. "I'm calling the sheriff," she muttered, tapping furiously. "You people think you own nature." What she didn't know was who she had just dialed and who I was already waiting for. But let's rewind a bit. My name's Richard, though most folks call me Rick. I'm 61, a retired high school science teacher, widower, and proud full-time resident of the lakeside cabin my father built with his own hands in the 70s, back when the place was quiet, simple, sacred. When I moved in full-time this past May, the lake was still a peaceful slice of heaven. You could hear birds louder than boats, and fish splashing across the water was enough to make you stop and smile. The dock groaned gently in the wind, like an old friend stretching its joints, but all that serenity started slipping away when the HOA got teeth. Now, I'm not anti-HOA by nature. Some neighborhoods need structure, but this one, it felt more like a petty suburban soap opera. And at the center of it, all crowned and smug, was Karen Whitmore. Karen had recently slithered her way into the role of acting HOA president after the last one mysteriously stepped down. Some say after a fire pit squabble turned legal. She lived up on Ridge Loop Drive in one of those sterile, boxy new builds with faux stone and overpriced window shutters. Always in a tennis skirt, even off the court. Always with her sunglasses like a tiara. And always in everyone's business. We hadn't spoken until last fall. That was when she first knocked on my door. "Hi there," she said, "too sweet to be real. Just a friendly reminder, we've started organizing a lake schedule for cabin access." "Excuse me." I blinked. "For swimming," she said brightly. "You can sign up for time slots on the HOA app, just to keep it fair." I stared at her for a long beat. This is my property, my shoreline, my dock. I don't do time slots. Her smile cracked, just a hair. "Well, actually, Rick, the HOA bylaws say the lake is a shared, visual amenity." I shut the door, politely, but Karen didn't like being dismissed. After that, her silver SUV started slowing each time it passed my drive. I began finding HOA flyers tucked into my fence slats. Warnings about noise violations. I don't even own a speaker. Notices about unapproved trim color for paint that hasn't changed since Reagan was in office. Still, I held my tongue, watched her spin her little web, figured she'd burn herself out eventually. That was until this morning. I had just poured a mug of fresh dark roast when her minivan rolled halfway into my gravel driveway like it was a Target parking spot. The side door slid open, and out tumbled 3 kids, loud as sirens. One of them knocked over my ceramic duck statue. Another grabbed my fishing rod like it was a toy. And Karen, she strolled up like she was 10 minutes early for brunch. "Oh good, you're home," she chirped. "Hope you don't mind, we needed a spot to cool off. The HOA pool's closed for treatment, and I promised the kids a swim." I blinked. "You brought your kids to my lakefront." "Come on, Rick," she said, brushing past me toward the porch. "Let's be neighborly. It's community-mindedness." I said nothing, just watched her plop her tote bag beside my book like it belonged there. That's when I made the quietest decision I've ever made. I walked over, locked the gate, and sat back with my coffee, the calmest man alive. Karen didn't realize until it was too late. When she did, her whole mood shifted. Panic mixed with fury. Then came the phone call. She ended it with a smug little whisper to her eldest. "It's okay, sweetheart. Officer Paul is on his way." I didn't flinch, because Officer Paul, he's my godson. On his way with backup. Let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below, because trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. 10 minutes. That's all it took before I saw the blue and white SUV cruise slowly down the dirt lane to my cabin, tires popping over gravel, dust rising like smoke signals. Karen straightened, ready for her moment. Sunglasses on, lip gloss blazing, face lifted like a school mom at a spelling bee. The kids quieted. Even the little one by the dock seemed to. Since the shift, but me, I just leaned back and sipped my coffee. The show was about to start. She turned toward me and said loud enough for the mosquitoes to hear, "Good, he's here." Didn't even wait for the SUV to park. She marched straight toward it, phone still in hand, waving like she was flagging down a celebrity. But when the window rolled down and Officer Paul stepped out, something shifted. She blinked. Paul was tall, built like a linebacker, moved like a man with time. Sunglasses still on, face unreadable. Gentle until someone tried to lie. Karen didn't hesitate. She launched in, "Thank God you're here," she said, breathy and dramatic. "This man locked us in. He's holding us hostage. My children are trapped and scared." Paul tilted his head slightly, eyes hidden, gaze drifting past her to me. I gave him a quiet nod from the porch. Karen noticed. "He refuses to open the gate." She kept going. "He's intimidating the children." Frankly, I don't know. If he's stable, you might want to call for backup, just in case. Paul lifted a hand. "Ma'am," he said calmly. "I know Mr. Rick. He's my godfather." Karen froze. Her arm fell to her side like someone had cut the strings. "Excuse me?" she said. "Quieter now?" Paul took off his sunglasses. The full weight of his stare landed on her. "You said you were being held hostage." Karen opened her mouth, closed it again. "Ma'am," he continued, voice cool and clipped, "this is private property. Mr. Rick owns this land. The dock, the gate, everything. You and your children are standing on your trespassing." Her face turned red. Not pink, not flushed, red. She turned toward me like I'd tricked her into this, her voice shaking. "You could have said something. You didn't even warn us." "I wasn't asked," I replied calmly. "You walked in like it was yours. I thought the lake was community space." "Nope," Paul cut in. "Shared view, not shared use, and only 4 houses inside the HOA boundary." He pointed casually toward the road. "Mr. Rick's cabin. It's outside the map, always has been." Karen's head shook like she could undo what had just happened. "This is insane. I'm going to report this to the board." Paul pulled out his notepad. "You're welcome to, but in the meantime, I'll need your ID. Trespassing with minors is a serious issue," Karen stammered. "But my kids were just..." "Ma'am," Paul said, voice gentle but immovable. "Let's sort this out respectfully, and maybe next time, don't invite yourself onto someone's porch." The air shifted, sharp and silent. Karen wasn't towering anymore. She was shrinking. Her boys stood awkwardly on the dock, quiet now, eyes darting. One of them called, "Mom, can we go?" She didn't answer. Just stared at me, like she was still trying to figure out what kind of man would sit back and let her destroy her own image, one word, one step at a time. Paul walked them toward the gate, use the extra key I'd given him years ago. But Karen paused at the top step. Her eyes lingered on the flower pot by the porch, a little wooden sign stuck in the soil. Welcome, but only if you knock. She hadn't knocked. She left without another word. Paul stayed behind, leaned against the porch railing beside me, watching the lake with that same easy stillness. "She's not done," he said. "I know, you want me to file it." I shook my head. "Let it sit. Let her stew." Paul chuckled. "You're dangerous when you're quiet." I grinned. Just a man with a chair, a gate, and a long memory. He left a few minutes later, gravel popping under his tires. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 3 days later, I heard footsteps on the deck again. This time, it wasn't Karen. It was her husband. He knocked once firm. No smile. Clipboard in one hand, rolled up sheet in the other. I opened the door slow and leaned into the frame. Didn't say anything. "Mr. Rick," he said, "I'm Todd Whitmore. I believe you've met my wife." Unfortunately, he forced a quick smile. No warmth behind it. "I don't want to make this into a thing," he said. "Just here, to clear up a misunderstanding." "Is that what we're calling trespassing now?" I asked. "A misunderstanding." Todd sighed, handed me the clipboard. "This is the original HOA map. You'll see the lakes listed as a community amenity. Doesn't mention private shoreline exceptions." I didn't look at it. That map's from before half these houses were built. My deed's older, so was my father's. He tapped the paper again, voice insistent. "We can't have people just claiming their own rules. The HOA's about order, structure, for families." I gave a quiet laugh. "That's rich. Your wife stormed in here with 3 kids, soaked my porch, and thought kindness meant not calling the cops." Todd's eyes flicked around like he expected Paul to come out of the trees. Then his tone changed. "Rick, I get it. You're retired. You want peace. But the HOA's been discussing opening lake access permanently for everyone. To avoid incidents like last week discussing I raised an eyebrow. Without me, you never come to meetings. Because your wife stopped sending me the notices." He flinched. That landed. I stepped out, handed the clipboard back. "Tell your HOA I'm not interested. Its property hasn't changed since my father nailed the first board. It's not about to become your neighborhood's splash zone." Todd hesitated, then looked out over the water. "You know," he said slowly, "people say you don't even use the dock, that it just sits there. Seems selfish." I smiled. Better a quiet dock than loud entitlement. He didn't respond, just turned and left, disappearing into the trees. But something about the way he said permanently stuck with me. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Too quiet. Then Saturday morning, I got a letter, hand-delivered, no postage. White envelope with the HOA seal at the top. Inside, "Dear Mr. Rick Jameson, the Homeowners Association has voted to reclassify Lakeview Shoreline as a community access zone. Effective immediately. All non-fenced shoreline areas are open to HOA members and guests. Failure to comply may result in citation, fine, or other corrective measures. No warning, no vote, no say." They just decided. My hands shook as I folded the letter. I don't get angry often, but this was theft in slow motion. They were coming for my lake, for my peace, for my father's legacy. But what they didn't know, that dock looked old, but it was wired. Security cams, motion sensors, mics. I installed them last spring, after a rash of break-ins nearby, and on Sunday, the alerts started buzzing. 3 teenagers, bright swim trunks, hopped the low fence and ran straight to the dock laughing, carrying towels, snacks, and a Bluetooth speaker. I checked the feed. Karen's nephews. I remembered them from last year's 4th of July, BBQ, and they were now climbing my ladder. Into my lake. I didn't call the cops. I grabbed my keys, pulled on my boots, and walked down to the gate. This time, I didn't just lock it. Block it. It also shows how far outside of it you really are. Crystal clear, no ambiguity. Not only are you not part of the HOA, your cabin's parcel was specifically excluded when they redrew the boundaries in 2015, on purpose. According to Hank, the original board didn't want to deal with grandfathered properties that couldn't be modernized. They thought it would keep the peace, he said. Guess they didn't count on Karen. I unfolded the map. It was detailed, annotated, and stamped with old county seals that hadn't faded. Hank had highlighted the HOA border in red. My property, a good 100 feet beyond the line. The lakefront, clearly marked private use only, was labeled Parcel 113B, Original Jameson Tract. You're not just outside their control, Hank said, tapping the paper. You're protected by easement law. They try this again, it won't be civil code to tell, be criminal. He handed me another folder. Inside was a copy of the flyer Karen had been taping around. Under it, he'd paper-clipped a draft cease and desist letter and a pre-filled civil complaint form. She crossed a line, Hank said. You've got a choice, fight this quietly, or make an example of her. I stared at the toolbox, then the canoe. The words were still there, selfish old man, ugly and uneven. I'd cleaned the paint off most of it earlier that day, but I'd left those words. Not out of shame, out of principle. Let them sit like a scar, a reminder of what it cost to stand still while others tried to take. I appreciate this, I said finally, but you don't owe me anything. I do, Hank said. I had a place like this once, lost it to a developer who smiled through every lie. No one stood up for me. Maybe I could do something right this time. Okay, before the Karens of the world burned down every quiet place left. He locked the box and set it gently back in the truck bed. Take some time, he said. Think about how far you're willing to go, and if you want help drawing a hard line, I'll be back. He turned and walked away like a man with nothing to prove. The truck rumbled to life and disappeared into the trees. I stood on the porch long after the taillights faded. The lake was still. Moonlight silvered the water, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something settle in my chest that wasn't anger. It was something older, like resolve, like remembering who I was before the world got too loud. I wasn't just defending a dock. I was guarding the last unbroken piece of something my father built. And I wasn't going to lose it to a clipboard, a flyer, or a woman with too much time and too little respect. Let them come. I wasn't just ready. I was waiting. Hood up, eyes wide, jaw clenched, but unmistakably her. A split-second frame, caught in the glare of the motion-activated lights, like a thief exposed mid-act. I didn't breathe, didn't blink, just stared. This wasn't HOA drama anymore. This wasn't flyers or fence disputes. This was attempted arson. A weapon on my property, with my niece asleep in the next room. And Karen Shea wasn't just pushing boundaries anymore. She was trying to burn them down. Ashley stood behind me, shaking. Is that her? I turned slowly, nodded once. Yeah, that's her. She covered her mouth. Uncle Rick. She tried to. I know. My voice came out steady, to calm. Not anymore. I called Paul. Didn't text. Didn't wait. He answered on the second ring. Rick, I need you at the cabin. Now, he must have heard it in my voice because he didn't ask questions. On my way. I turned back to the screen, hit the export button, and copied the footage to a secure drive. My hands were steady, my jaw wasn't. By the time Paul arrived, lights still flashing in the woods from the motion sensors. Hank had pulled back up too. He saw the broken jar, the soot stain, the burn mark on the mulch, and went deathly still. You get a face, he asked. I handed him the still frame. He cursed, low and slow. That's enough. That's more than enough. Paul reviewed the footage in silence, didn't even flinch. When it ended, he stood tall and simply said, "This is felony, you pressing charges." I looked at Ashley. She was hugging her knees on the porch swing, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She looked smaller than she had the night before, but her eyes were fire now. I turned to Paul. Yes, every charge we can throw. Paul nodded. Good, because this ends tonight. By noon the next day, Karen Whitmore was in handcuffs. The county sheriff himself showed up at her Ridge Loop house. The news traveled faster than wildfire. Neighbors watched from porches and bay windows as their queen bee was escorted to the cruiser, screaming something about misunderstandings and lies. But it was too late. The evidence was digital, time-stamped, and damning. She'd committed a crime, not a petty power move, not a bad faith flyer, but a felony, and the law doesn't care how many votes you got at the HOA meeting. The fallout came fast and loud. Karen was suspended from her job pending investigation. Ashley's warning was officially rescinded. Paul filed a restraining order on her behalf. That same afternoon, and the HOA, well, they scrambled. They tried to distance themselves, issued a statement about Karen acting independently, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Clancy forwarded my formal complaint to the State Housing Board. The County Council opened a review of the HOA's conduct going back 5 years. And Hank, he submitted his own records, photos, maps, minutes from meetings he'd quietly attended. As a guest for years, turns out he hadn't just been watching, he'd been collecting. It's been a month since the fire that wasn't. Ashley still lives here, at least for now. She's calmer, stronger, working remotely, making plans. We fish sometimes. She reads on the dock. The words "selfish old man" have long been sanded off, replaced by a fresh coat of green paint. I left a note inside the canoe, to Dad, still holding the line. The fence still stands. The cameras still record. And every now and then, someone still slows their car near the edge of my gravel drive, but they don't stop anymore. They just drive on. Sometimes power isn't noise, it's presence. It's a man on a porch, watching, remembering, and waiting.